Hey everyone, welcome back to Widget Wisdom. In today's video, we are diving deep into one of the most crucial concepts when building modern apps, state management. Specifically, we are going to explore state management using the provider package in Flutter. Managing state can get tricky, especially as apps grows larger. But no worries, by the end of this video, you will be fully equipped with the knowledge to manage states seamlessly using provider. First, let's start with the basics. What is a state? So, state refers to data or information that can change during the lifetime of a widget. For example, a counter value in a counter app or whether a user is logged in or not. So, when you have a small apps with few widgets, managing state might seem simple, but in a complex app, managing and sharing this state between various widgets can become a hassle. That's where state management come into picture. So why do we need something like provider? So there are several ways to manage state in Flutter like set state, inherited widget or scoped model and block. But provider stands out because of its simplicity, flexibility and built-in dependency injection. It's a great tool for both small and large apps. Flutter's provider package is the most recommended state management solution by the Flutter team itself. Why? Because it makes managing state so much easier. You can inject dependencies and manage state at a global or local level in a clean and very efficient way. Alright, now let's dive into the practical side. First we need to install the provider package in our Flutter project. So for that, come to the pubspec.yaml file and here add this provider package into dependencies section. Then tap onto this pubget option to get all the dependencies. Now that we have provider package installed, let's create a simple counter app that will help us understand the basics of using provider. So in Flutter, change notifier is one of the most used class for implementing provider because it notifies listener when the state changes. Let's create a basic counter model. So here I'm creating a new Dart file as counter model. Now come inside this file and here create a class as counter. Now this class will use the change notifier mixin, which is a part of Flutter's provider package. It allows this class to notify listeners when changes occur in its state. So here add the with keyword to implement the mixin, then here add the change notifier. Now come inside this class and here create a private variable as count. This will store the current count value. And we are added the underscore before the variable name because it makes this variable to private. This means it cannot be accessed directly from outside of this class, which is good practice to encapsulate data. Then create the getter for count variable because this exposes the private variable to the outside of the world. It allows other part of the app like widgets to read the current count value, but they cannot modify it directly because that's a getter. Now come below this and here create a new function as void increment. So this is the method that increments the count value. Okay, now inside this function here just increase the count value by 1. So for that you can add the +1 into it or you can directly add the increment symbol like ++. Then here add the notify listeners. So this is a method provided by the change notifier class. It informs any listeners example widget that are observing this counter class that the state has been changed and the UI should be rebuilt to reflect the new state. For example, if a widget is listening to this counter class using provider or consumer, it will automatically rebuilds when the counter value change. Okay. Now after creating the model, we need to wrap our app's root widget with the change notifier provider so that the state can be shared across widget. So for that, come inside the run app and here remove this my app and here add the change notifier provider. So this change notifier provider is a widget that is provided by the provider package. It acts as a bridge between your app and the counter class, allowing widgets to access the counter class and listens to its changes. It wraps your app and supplies an instance of counter to the widget tree so that any widget in the tree can access and listen to changes in counter. Now this change notifier provider needs two parameters. First one is the create and second one is the child. So the create method is called when the change notifier provider is first built it generates the counter object that will be provided to the widgets. So basically this will create a new instance of the counter class. Okay. Then for child, here add the my app widget. So this is the main widget of your app, and this is where the UI and logic for the app are defined. Now we need to consume the state inside our widgets. We will use consumer to do this efficiently. So before adding the consumer, come inside the build method, and here we need to create the instance of the counter model. So here create a variable as counter, then here add the provider, and then of context, and here define the class name, that is the model name. So here add the counter. Now this counter is the instance of the counter model which we have created using the provider. Okay, and here add the center widget, then inside it add a consumer. So this widget provided by the provider package, and it listens to the counter object and rebuilds its child widget whenever counter state is changed. Now inside this consumer widget, here add the builder. So this builder needs context, counter and child. And as you know, the context is the build context of the widget, and the counter is the instance of the counter class provided by the change notifier provider, and the child is the static part of the UI that doesn't depends on the model. Then from here return a text widget which will show the counter value. So for that, here add the counter, and then here add the counter instance, and then extract the count value from it. So for that, here add the dot count. So this will display the current count value. Then come outside and here add the floating action button, then add the floating action button widget. Now for child, here add the add icon, then for on pressed, then add the model name. So our model name is counter, so I have added that. Then call the function which need to be performed after pressing on this button. So here we want to increment the number, so call the increment method. Now, and the increment method increments the counter value and calls notify listeners to update the UI. Now if you save the code and run the application, and when I press onto this button, then you can see our counter value is getting updated each time when I'm pressing onto this button. So this is the basic implementation of provider package. Now in real world application, you'd likely have several pieces of state that need to be managed. Like you want to manage the 2 or 3 providers simultaneously. So for doing that, provider has an elegant solution called multi-provider. So you can add the multiple providers like this, and for using multiple provider, we can easily manage multiple states. Now each widget can consume the state it needs without worrying about other parts of the app. Now let's level up. Next, we are going to create a simple to-do app using provider. This will showcase how you can use provider to manage more complex state. So for that, let's create a new model class and let's name it as to-do, and then come inside this file and here create a class as to-do. Then this class will also going to implement the change notifier so that it can notify the listeners or the UI components whenever there is a change in state. Then afterwards, here create a list and its type is going to be string, then name it as task because we are going to store the task inside this list. Then create the getter for this list. So here I have created the getter for this list. Then in our to-do app, we are just going to have 2 basic operations. First one to add the task and second one to remove the task. So for that, create a method as add task, and this going to take a task parameter because we are going to store the just task name. So here add that, then come inside this method and here just simply add this task to this tasks list. So here add task, then add, and then the string task. Now here add the notify listener to notify the UI component that there is a new task has been added to this list. Then come outside of this method and here create a new method as remove task. So this function will going to be take the index parameter because we are going to remove the specific index from this list. So here just add task, then remove add to remove a specific index, then pass the index value. Then add the notify listener to notify the UI that something has been removed from the list. Then come inside this build class and here we need to retrieve the instance of to-do model from the provider. So for that, here create a new variable as to-do, and then here add the provider, then of to do, and then the context method. So it looks up the widget tree and finds the nearest to do provider, making the state of the to do class accessible in the current widget tree. Now from here remove everything, and from here return a scaffold widget, and then for app bar just add the app bar widget and title is going to be to do app. Then for body, here add the list view builder, and now for adding the item count, here add the item count property. Then we need to access the tasks list by using this to do. So here add to do, then tasks, then the length. Then here add the item builder, and item builder needs context and index, so add that. Then from here return a list style widget. Then for title, add the text as to do, then task, then the index. So we will just show the to do. Then here add the trailing icon for deletion of this list style. So here add an icon button, and for icon add the delete icon, and let's make it color to red. Then for onPressed method, just call the remove task method of this to do model. Okay, then here add the floating action button for adding a new task. So here add floating action button, then add the floating action button widget, and for child add an add icon. Then for onPressed, just simply call the add task method of this to do model, and here add the task. Then here I'm not going to add the edit text field for getting the text from the user. Here I'm just simply increasing the index of the task's length. Okay, so here just add the to do task length and then increase the index by 1. Now if you save the code and run the application, then you can see, and here we are having an error because we haven't added this to do model class at the beginning of the run app. So come above here and here add the to do for this change notifier providers create, so that it will create the instance for the to do. Now if you save the code and run the application, then our app will be working perfect. When I'm tapping onto this plus button, a new to do task has been added to the list, and if I'm pressing this delete icon, then the task has been removed from the list. To wrap up things, Provider is a powerful and flexible tool for state management in Flutter. It helps you manage your app's state efficiently, whether you are building small widgets or large complex apps. I encourage you to explore more advanced techniques and practice building apps with multiple states to fully grasp the power of this package. Now, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment and subscribe to Widget Wisdom for more Flutter tutorials. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.